And now we're talking with Ann McMan, author of many of my favorite novels. So I'll try not to be a jackass as I sit directly across from her for this.
Too late.
Her latest novel is The Black Bird of Chernobyl, which just came out very recently from Bywater Books. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell people a little bit of what The Black Bird of Chernobyl is all about?
Well, oddly enough, I guess you could say it's a spin-off. Several years ago, I wrote a novel called The Big Toe. That's about two women who meet when they take unlikely temp jobs repossessing cars. One of the women, Frankie Stoller, grew up in an old Winston-Salem family, and her parents run a funeral home. Her sister, Lila, who is a mortician, is kind of she talks like Lorraine Bracco. She's terribly dark and irreverent and goth as hell and has scorn for anything that speaks to romance. And Lila, I thought, was just too rich a character to leave alone. And I felt like she deserved some ink of her own. So that really inspired me to write a book that talks about Lila and shares a little bit about her journey.
So I think Lila is the second mortician in all of Les Fick. I think I've read...
Who was the first?
I think I'm almost positive P.J. Trebelhorn wrote one. And if it wasn't a mortician, it was somebody who ran a funeral home. But I haven't read that book in many years, and I can't remember the title. So sorry, people. But we'll try to put it in the show notes.
Well, everybody told me this was going to be the kiss of death, which you know I excel at, right? I mean, I wake up in the morning and try to think of topics that are guaranteed not to sell.
And yet, here we are at GCLS when I've heard so many people say they're so excited about this book. How fun was it to write, Lila?
Lila was like a gift. She was wonderful to write because she has my sense of humor. You know, she's dark and irreverent. She basically doesn't. Can I use a bad word?
Oh, we do.
Oh, yeah.
Do you?
Okay. If you want a little behind the scenes of the Clearly Recommended podcast, we didn't label it as explicit, but Apple did. So.
Oh, well, let me help you out with that. Lila doesn't give a flying fuck about anything.
Wonderful.
So I really liked her, and it was a lot of fun to, really come up with as much funereal humor as and death can really be funny.
Yes.
If you take the right perspective on it.
Yes.
And one of the things that I drew on that helped me tremendously, looking back over all the years of GCLS conferences I've attended in different cities, some of the really bizarre, the job I want in the next life is the person in the hotel who books conferences. Like there was one in Miami years ago where they booked the Golden Crown conference with a funeral directors conference. No, I'm not even kidding. Wow. So of course that's in this book. The other thing, I think it was in DC maybe, where there was an anime. Do you remember that?
Oh, the furries.
Remember the
furries?
The furries are in this book. One night after a grueling day, they were all over the hotel. Salem and I were on our way back to our room. We came out of the elevator, rounded the corner, and a giant rabbit was giving a blowjob to a, so it's kind of like, this is a book I can write. So in the book, Lila and Sparkle go to a funeral convention in Vegas, and there's a cosplay.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So there's a lot of GCLS history woven into.
Okay,
they actually
that's
had.
amazing.
Am I talking too long?
No.
They actually had a sign in one of the elevators that said, "Remove your headdress if it's higher than 7 feet."
Oh my God!
I do remember
that one.
I remember the notes. Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to write Lila.
So, I mean, I guess spoiler for the people listening. I've read this already, so I have a couple more questions, and I will be talking about it more in the next episode. So you can expect kind of my more reviewy type thoughts there. But I found it really, really interesting that Lila was so committed to making the ecological footprint.
Right. Green burial.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, because it's a book with a point of view about how an industry should be evolving.
It is, and I'm glad that you picked up on that, because I did tons and tons of research on, and boy, was the research for this one fun. Have you ever watched an embalming? Don't.
No,
I'm good.
But anyway, no.
Swedish,
I mean,
so no.
there is a woman named Caitlin Doty who is amazing, famous, and she has a podcast. It's like a YouTube show called Ask a Mortician. You can't look away. I mean, it's like it's like an 18-car pileup on the highway. You want to slow down, get off, and come back around. And she's basically my archetype for Lila. She's dark, she's funny as hell, and irreverent, and she is all about what she calls good death. And she has a foundation called the Order of Good Death. So I became enamored with her. I bought her books. She has a book called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes that is a memoir of one of her first jobs in California, knowing nothing about it. She got a job working in a crematory and had no clue what all was going to... Wow. And then she ended up being uniquely suited to the work and took to it. Now she's a full-fledged mortician, but she is a champion of these alternative eco-friendly, carbon-neutral forms of burial, like human composting, like hydrocremation, which I personally wish to have. I didn't even know about it until I did the research for this book.
What is hydrocremation?
Hydrocremation, there's a term for it. Basically, they take the body and it goes into a chamber, like a stainless steel chamber, with any kind of common alkaline solution, something you have in your house. And it's warm water. They rotate it, they mix it, and in don't quote me on this, I might be wrong, in like 2 weeks or something, all of the organic matter, including the skeleton, is completely dissolved, and there is nothing in there but clear water.
Wow.
No toxins, no anything. And it could go right down the drain.
Oh my gosh.
It's remarkable. And it's legal now in something like, 23 states.
I didn't know anything about that or the compost.
Human composting is fascinating.
I had no idea that crematoriums are bad for the environment.
They're terrible for the environment.
I thought it was better than burying.
You might as well be driving Granddad's Oldsmobile. Punch out the catalytic converter and have yourself a party.
So, honestly, reading this book, and this is, I suppose, this is going to be news to Neil, who edits the podcast, but hey, babe, I think I want to look into more eco-friendly, because we talked about, it doesn't make sense to take up space in the world, just burn us, it's fine. Right. And it's no, there's better. Well,
we all thought that was better, right? Because you're not doing the concrete burial. Why are we? This book is, y'all. Please believe me.
But I'm just saying,
this book is a romance.
It is, but also I think this book is important because it actually changed my perspective in how I want mine to go someday. That's the transformative power of fiction.
Well, the other thing that what was the other thing? It just went away. See, it might be closer for me than we realized. It's a romance. Well, the other thing that I really wanted to do was take on the whole taboo of death. Why are people afraid of thinking about it and writing about it? And why isn't it okay to make it funny? Because there are actually hilarious. That's why the book itself, every chapter in the book begins with an obituary.
Yes.
And the obituaries are terribly Southern. And if you never like a woman who's the biggest joy of her life was making chicken pies for Jesus.
Yes.
I mean, these are real people. Okay, so each chapter begins with an obituary from one of these lovely people. And then the chapter proceeds, and usually the chapter ends with the actual funeral service, and everything that could possibly go wrong goes wrong.
Well, and it's so fun. It's a really fun rom-com. And I think the thing that I love, too, is Lila she's quite unlikable to start. Or she's difficult to like if you haven't met her before.
Right.
But I think for me, realizing, because it's all told from her perspective, and so it's really it's almost like a coming-of-age book for a middle-aged person, which I love. She had an emotional failure to launch and goes through a series of events that helps her.
Well, that force her really out of her. Lila is perfectly happy inhabiting her world downstairs.
Yes.
Where the business of the funeral. She doesn't want to deal with the public. She likes dead people a lot. That works out for her.
Yeah.
And then everything changes. Everything changes when her father, who is retiring, hires a marketing and brand professional to lighten up the business
With a bunch of damn cookies.
with a bunch of damn cookies. And of course, Lila hates this woman with a passion. I mean, she's like her polar opposite.
I mean, her name is Sparkle.
Her name is, and I'm like, oh dear God, I actually wrote a character named Sparkle.
I was wondering how you were going to make that make sense, but you did.
Thank you.
You did. It worked.
Thank you.
So, where can people find
The Black Bird of Chernobyl published just this past week on Tuesday. For anyone at the conference, it's probably too late for that. It's on sale in the vendor area. It's also available everywhere else, online, bookstores, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, name it. It's available in ebook, paperback, and the audiobook is read by the fabulous Christine Williams. And I may tell you she nailed it. She absolutely nailed it.
Is that what you're listening?
I haven't listened to it yet,
Okay.
but I will. Thank you so
Thank you
much
both.
for joining
And
us.
thank you both for what you do for our literature and our community. We're so in your debt.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's so sweet.
And you're damn decorative, too.
Yeah, we're pretty cute. We do all right.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
All right.